Today's topic is pricing procedure. Pricing procedure in the sense the way vendor is gonna charge us for our material. So there could be multiple charges, right? It's just not about the price of the material. There are multiple dependent things on a procurement cycle where all the charges are coming into place, and vendor charges us for inclusive of all those items, right? So all that comes under the pricing procedure where we provide the conditions and based on the inputs from the vendor, and the data is mentioned and the final price is calculated, which will be used when we do the invoice verification. In invoice verification, there will be a tally of the two invoices. First is invoice given by the vendor, and the second one is the invoice we created. Invoice in the sense the pricing procedure we created in the system, right? So both of them needs to be tallied in terms of the total value in order to get the invoice process. For that we have to configure the pricing procedure in our system. Okay, so first of all, let's take some examples. Like how you might have seen the invoices, right? We have seen the invoices many times in our life. So generally how it looks, so we generally get the header data, the person name, the company name to which it is processed, the names, the invoice number, everything at the header level, right? And then we get to the item levels. For example, if I just take one random example, let's say we have the gross price of the material. Let's consider it as $100. Then we have another section where all the discounts are mentioned. It could be multiple discounts like pure one by one discount where qualitative cash discount is given, or there is a discount based on the quantity. It's called best discount for quantity. So it could be types of discounts depending on the nature. Then there are, let's say, surcharges which are applied by a vendor for certain work or certain human work. So that could be a surcharges. Let's say discount is minus $10 and we have a surcharge plus one. Then there are next thing which is termed as taxes. It could be a tax or freight charges, or it could be custom duties depending on if we are doing the import. Based on all of this, the final price would be calculated. Based on all of this, whatever plus minus we do for the gross price, depending on that, the net price would be calculated. It would be, let's say, X dollars. Okay. So this is generally the type of invoice we see in procurement, which will be provided by the vendor. Now, all these conditions which we are saying, the discounts, surcharges, taxes, all this needs to be fixed before we issue the purchase order to the vendor. Okay. All this needs to be discussed by the purchasing department with the respective entity from the supplier, and it has to be finalized, and the net price has to be finalized, and after that only we will add all these conditions in our purchase order so that the net price will be calculated, and after that itself we have to print it out and send it to the could be anything, print out or email, whatever it may be, but we have to issue it to the supplier. Okay, but before that, this calculation and this finalization has to be done. Now, where can we see this on the purchase order, or the from the end user perspective, where end user can see this? So let's check that. So this is the purchase order screen. If we come at the item level, then we have the conditions tab here. And under the conditions tabs, you could see there are multiple conditions available. Depending on the requirement, the conditions will come. And as per this PO, there were three conditions: gross price, deductible tax, the cash discount. Based on that, the final value is calculated, which is $11. Okay. Similarly, so this is the place where we will find the our pricing procedure with the conditions under the condition tab in the purchase order. Okay. Now, next thing is how to configure all this and the back end so that the front end you will get from the user perspective. First of all, instead of going directly into the configurations, let us first analyze what we have seen on the screen. So just let's go to the analysis tab screen, click on the analysis push button, and here we will get the overall picture of what has been seen in the conditions tab. What is it? So we have a pricing procedure RM1000. So this is a pricing procedure which will consist all the condition type. So if you see this tab, this four digits number codes, these are the condition type: gross price, discounts, then the different types of discounts itself, and the statistical value and the taxes. Okay. So these all are the condition types which are configured in a pricing procedure, group in a pricing procedure, and this pricing procedure has been issued for this purchase order. Due to some reason, we will see that reason, but due to some reason, this pricing procedure is being picked because there are multiple pricing procedures in the system, but there is a particular reason why system is picking particularly this one. And after this system selects this pricing procedure, then all the required condition types will be coming from the same one. Okay, so this is where we can see. And if you see, wherever you will find this drop down option, this drop down option will show you that for this particular procedure, or for this particular, sorry, for this particular condition type, what are the condition tables available, and based on which what are the condition records available. We will see that once we do the configuration. Okay, now first, before diving deep into the configuration, let us first understand for this purchase order. As soon as I provided some inputs to the purchase order, why system picked RM1000 pricing procedure? Why not any other? So let's check that. Okay. So path is like this: materials management, purchasing, conditions, and set calculation schema purchasing. So here actually the configuration is done for the pricing procedure. Like we create the pricing procedure or the calculation schema, whatever it may be, you can call it anything. And inside that we will have the control data where we will add the condition type. Okay. This is the path where which I was discussing about, like what we are trying to discuss. First thing, for that particular PO, I provided few inputs, right, in the system, provided the material for this PO. I provided the material, plant, the vendor, then the header level data, quantity, price, everything. With this minimal data, which is mandatory, as soon as I click check, system automatically determined the pricing procedure and it provided the condition type. Then what is that thing which I provided which affected the selection of pricing procedure we are seeing? So that we can see due to this, which is happening due to schema group, pricing, purchasing organization, and schema group supplier. Okay. So instead of understanding this, there is one tab available. Let me open that. And with that tree diagram, you will understand what we are seeing. So this tree diagram explains how the pricing procedure configuration is done. Okay. Or in other words, it tells us how system picks the configuration when we try to create a purchase order. So obviously it starts with the transactional data purchase order. In purchase order, we provide two inputs which are required for a pricing procedure. What are those two inputs? The first one is vendor and the second one is purchasing organization. These are the inputs we provide in a purchase order. And these two entities are actually responsible for determining the calculation schema or the pricing procedure. Calculation schema is nothing but another term for pricing procedure. So sometimes I'll use calculation schema, sometimes I'll use the pricing procedure, but do understand that both things are the same. So vendor and purchasing organization, the combination will tell us which calculation schema needs to be used in my purchase order. In configuration, we do not assign the calculation schema directly to the vendor or purchasing organization. Okay, understand this. Vendor is the master data, right? And purchasing organization is the org element. Now there will be multiple org elements in the PR and there will be multiple vendors in the master data. So you will not go and assign the calculation schema for each combination. That's where there is one term involves which is called schema group, vendor schema group and purchasing organization schema group. So these two are configuration elements which are created so that you can combine the different types of vendor PR combinations and assign them to the schema groups. And in the end, you will assign the calculation schema to the combination of schema group. Okay, let me explain that. So see, there might be 10 vendors and there are two purchasing organizations, multiple, let's say there are thousands of vendors and 10 purchasing organizations. Out of that 1,000 vendors, there are hundreds of such vendors along with a combination of two purchasing organizations for which I want to have a single calculation schema. Same calculation schema for 100 vendors combining with two of the purchasing organizations. So I cannot create 200 entries instead of creating 200 entries where I will assign all 100 vendors to first PR and next 100 vendors to second PR and then mention the calculation schema. Instead of doing that, what I'll do, all of these 100 vendors, I'll assign it to the same vendor schema group, one vendor schema group, let's say XYZ. Similarly, both of these purchasing organizations I will assign to a one purchasing organization schema group, let's say another ABC. Then what I'll do in the configuration, I will have a combination of XYZ and ABC assigned to a singular calculation schema. And that singular entry will fulfill all the requirements of 200 entries, right? So that's the importance of schema group. Now, with this schema group, what we understood, how to determine the calculation schema. Then in that calculation schema, we have all the condition type. Condition types are nothing but what we discussed just now. The gross price, discounts, taxes, surcharges, rebates, all those things are nothing but are condition type. Okay, all these condition types are configured in a calculation schema. Now, if this condition type needs to be extracted manually to a purchase order, this is where the configuration ends. If it needs to be extracted manually to a purchase order every time, then just mention this condition type in a calculation schema and then just flow it back manually to a purchase order. Mention that condition type manually in a purchase order and you will get it, because of you have done the minimal configuration required in order to run this manual cycle. So this is the manual cycle. But if you want to have this condition type populated automatically in a purchase order based on the requirement, then there are few more steps which you have to do in the configuration. What are those? Then we have to configure the access sequence, condition tables, and the condition record. Okay. So if you want to opt for the automatic population of the condition type, then we have to implement the access sequence first of all. This access sequence will have the different condition tables. So we have to create a table. Okay. So in these configurations, we have to create a new table in order to fulfill our requirement so that the required condition type will populate to a PO. And in that table, obviously, if you have just table, it will not populate the data. In that table, we have to fill the data. Then only it will have the impact on the purchase order. So that data will be fulfilled by the condition record. Okay. So understand there are three segments to this configuration. First is actually not three, more than this. So first is your transaction data, purchase order. Okay, where the calculation schema will get determined. Then you have your master data and org elements, which is vendor and PORG. Then you have your customization workbench or your configurations, which is nothing but your schema group and your calculation schema and condition type. Then you have access sequence and condition table, which is your workbench request. Okay, there is a difference between customization request and a workbench request. Customization request is applicable only for a client, which is done by functional consultants generally, and workbench request, which is applicable irrespective of the client throughout the system. So this is that, which is access sequence and condition tables. And then there is another master record, which is condition record, master data, which is condition record, which is maintained by the end user. Okay. Once end user maintains this condition record, then that required condition type will automatically flow back to the purchase order.